الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فيا عباد الله أوصي نفسي وأوصيكم بتقوى الله عز وجل قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن العظيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم صدق الله العظيم. All praises are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Him and His help we seek. I testify to the fact that no one is worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is alone and has no partner. And I also testify to the fact that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His true servant and final messenger, whose teachings and guidance are what we are commanded to follow if we want happiness in this life as well as in the hereafter. Brothers and sisters, very recently, within the past few weeks, in South Dakota, in the newspapers, you've probably come across a slogan or a campaign raising awareness for a drug problem that we have in South Dakota. And the slogan is, "Meth, I'm on it." And most likely everyone probably heard about it, and most likely everyone probably heard about it even though maybe we don't routinely watch the news, maybe we don't routinely read the newspapers, but we did come across this headline, "Meth, I'm on it." And probably the reason why we came across this is because people were making fun of it. You read that slogan, and you think to yourself, really? Is that the best that they could do? Is that what South Dakota now is known for, the meth state, and everybody's making fun of South Dakota? And that's probably why we came across it. Let me ask a question though. How many of us knew South Dakota had a problem with meth? prior to this newspaper or this campaign, how many of us were familiar that we even had a meth problem? Meth is short for a type of illegal drug called methamphetamine. It's a street drug, highly addictive. How many of us knew we had a problem? How many of us knew that South Dakota had a problem with meth? And maybe some of us, the answer is no. And for the rest of us, the answer is yes. Yeah, I knew about it. But we knew about it. Okay, I know about it. Yeah, I know there's meth in South Dakota. And then we just move on with life. So we say yes, but the yes is more of an apathetic type of yes. But the problem was that the state of South Dakota, the state of South Dakota wanted people to realize that, look, this is actually a very, very, very big problem. And it's not enough to just know that it exists. It's actually a very big problem. As a matter of fact, this is actually an epidemic in South Dakota. The problem of meth in the state of South Dakota is very big. It clogs the court systems. It clogs the prisons. It clogs the jails. It clogs the treatment centers, the rehab facilities. It cripples people. It destroys their families. If you look at the reports from the first responders, they hear that there's meth activity at a house. They go to the house. They open the doors. They see children that were neglected. They are literally in starvation because they were being neglected because the parents are so busy, so preoccupied using the drugs that they completely lost, sight. They completely just forgot that other people exist that they have to take care of. There was actually a story that they went inside a house, they saw a 4-month-old baby who was already dead. It was on the swing, and it had been there for some time. The father had no idea because he was so busy using, his drugs. That the state of South Dakota is trying to really get the word out that, listen, this is actually a very big deal in South Dakota. And the cost of meth is tremendous on the system, on the state. There's the cost of the drug itself. So if somebody was a meth user, it can cost annually between $12,000 to $38,000 a year. And it doesn't really matter what income bracket you're in. That's probably a strain on any one of us spending $38,000 a year on drugs. There's the cost associated with the lost productivity, that people who miss work because they're using their drugs. There's the cost of the associated crime that happens because of using drugs or pursuing the drugs. There's cost on the healthcare system because of healthcare related problems from using the drugs. There's production hazards of the drug. You hear about meth labs exploding and injuring people and neighborhoods. There's diseases that are spread that's associated with drug use, such as HIV and other transmitted infections. There's the unemployment associated with it. There's the domestic abuse and the domestic violence. There's divorce. There's losing your children. And then there's homelessness. And this is all because of this drug epidemic. So the state of South Dakota, they wanted to really take a desperate measure to let everybody know that, listen, it's not a small thing. That methamphetamine usage in this state is a big problem. Now, brothers and sisters, the reason why I am talking about methamphetamine, the problem of meth use in the state of South Dakota, the reason why I'm bringing this up in a Jum'ah khutbah is because as a Muslim living in South Dakota, this is our problem. As a Muslim living in this society, living in this city, living in this state, we need to make it our problem. Islam is not just praying and fasting. It's not just coming to the masjid and going home and then going to work and sending my kids to school and then back to the masjid. That's not what Islam is. Islam was sent as a guide for all of humanity and a system for the entire society. It was sent to bring people, to bring society from darkness into light. Islam, it was sent to the Jahili Arabs. They were not good people. They were not the most civilized, the most sophisticated, the most advanced, the most, they were not good people. They were alcoholics. They had their drugs. They had their crime. They had their oppression. There was racism. There was slavery. There was injustice towards women. There was injustice towards, orphans. It was not a good society. And Islam came to address the problems of the society and see what it transformed into. And I'm not saying that everybody was completely perfect and sinless and made no mistakes afterwards, but compared to what it was before, it is a complete night and day transformation, and that is what Islam is supposed to be. It's supposed to be for the whole society. And when we see signs of this within our religion, one of our pillars, zakah, is a mandatory charity. It is recommended that zakah stays locally. That if there is a family in need who is eligible for zakah, we give them the zakah with the hope and expectation that the next year they'll be able to take themselves out of their condition so that the next year they're contributing to zakah. You read about the rights of the neighbor, and everybody already knows this, that the companion said that that the rights of the neighbor were stressed upon so much that there was even concern, or they were speculating that maybe they'd be included in their inheritance. Like, that's how far the rights of the neighbors were. And they didn't clarify, if they were Muslims. This is just the rights of the neighbor. So Islam is a system for society. We live in this society. Now, brothers and sisters, I will confirm with all of you that I do love South Dakota. I do have a love for this state. I do have a love for this city. I'll tell you a story. Maybe about a year ago, I was at the 6th Street Masjid, and those African brothers, may Allah bless them, between Maghrib and Isha, they like to drink tea and they like to, have a good time and talk, and I was sitting there with them. And then I just asked them, how long have you been living in this state, and, how did you come here? And they were telling me that they came here originally from part of the refugee, program. And then I asked them, well, why did you stay? You've been here several decades. How come you didn't leave? And in my mind, I grew up in Chicago. My mind was, why don't you go to a city with more Muslims? Like, why did you stay? And their answer was, well, why not? This was a great place. The people are nice. There's no crime. This was a great place to raise kids. It's a good place. And I could tell that from this group of people, they were sincere. They loved living here. This was a good place. And I wanted to clarify something. It is halal. This might sound funny, but it is halal. It is permissible to love your home. It is permissible to love your city. It is permissible to love your country. That's permissible. As a Muslim, it is permissible to have love for your land. The Prophet ﷺ, when he brought Islam, he didn't bring Islam to get rid of people's backgrounds. He didn't get rid of people's ethnic, their tribes and their names. And no, he respected and honored people's heritage. As a matter of fact, during the battles, the Prophet ﷺ used to group different people together based on their same city or tribe or where they came from, and they all would carry their own banner and their own flag. And this would help build the excitement, the energy, they really didn't want to mess up, because I am representing my city, my tribe, my name. I'm not going to be the reason why we fail, because I am representing my city, my people. I'm not going to be the one to mess up. And that was the excitement, and that was, that's what the Prophet ﷺ fostered. So it is permissible to love your city, to love your land. Now, if we love our land, do we know about it? Brothers and sisters, I'm asking all of us, do we really know the problems of South Dakota? Do we really know the problems of Sioux Falls? Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Rasulullah ﷺ was sending Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen to give da'wah to non-Muslims. And he gave Mu'adh a number of pieces of advice. And one of the things he said to Mu'adh was to fear the dua of the oppressed. Because between the oppressed and Allah, there is no hijab. Now think about this. Mu'adh ibn Jabal is going, number one, to a non-Muslim land. So Rasulullah ﷺ didn't say, fear the dua of the Muslim or the mu'min or, He said, fear the dua of the oppressed. It doesn't matter what religion they are. Fear the dua of the oppressed. And number two, by the way, this is a land you've never been to. You're going there, but it doesn't matter. Once you get there, figure it out. If I'm telling you to fear the dua of the oppressed, that means you need to know where oppression is and who the oppressed are. It doesn't matter that you didn't grow up there, it's not your land. When you get there, pay attention. So brothers and sisters, it is our job as Muslims to know. Especially if we live here, especially if we're saying that we love the state and the city. Methamphetamine is just one problem of South Dakota. Do we know any more problems that are special to South Dakota? There are other drugs out there. There's alcohol. That's a problem everywhere. Brothers and sisters, do we even know that another problem that South Dakota has is human trafficking? Do we know that? Because that surprised me when I first came here. I had no idea that people would kidnap other human beings and smuggle them and sell them into slavery. South Dakota is ranked number 11 in the whole United States. And as a general rule, anytime you have large expanses of land and roads and empty roads, then that kind of sets up the prime conditions for things like human trafficking. But brothers and sisters, there's a reason why there are all these billboards all over Sioux Falls, that if you suspect something, say something. If you see something, say something. Because human trafficking is also another big problem in South Dakota. And brothers and sisters, I don't even have to talk about the problems, or rather the oppression, that the Native Americans have dealt with in this country or in this state. Why am I talking about Native Americans? Sioux Falls. Where did the name Sioux come from? I mean, I'm sure we all know. Sioux is actually a name for Native American tribes. And if I understand correctly, right now there are two large categories of the Sioux people. There's Lakota and Dakota. That's where we get our name from. Sioux Falls, Sioux Valley, Sioux City, North Dakota, South there's a huge Native American history here. And I don't need to tell anybody the injustice and the oppressions that the Native people faced and what they continue to face. It's well known. In the native lands, in the native tribes, the problems with alcohol, the problems with gangs, the problems with violence, the problems with drugs, the problem with access to health care. These are all known problems. And brothers, another problem in Sioux Falls is the problem of homelessness. And people argue that was a bigger problem, or that's been a longer problem than this whole meth epidemic. Now, understand that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they also had to figure out their problems. There was homelessness in that society too. There was homelessness in that society too. And the difference is in our society, we try to get rid of the homeless. You know, you're not allowed to stay here. You're not allowed to be here. We try to get rid of the homeless. The Prophet ﷺ worked to get rid of homelessness. He worked to fix the problem. The people in Medina who didn't have a home, they were given a special status. They were called Ahlus-Suffah. And they had a special place in the masjid, and that's where they lived, and they had a special status, and they had a special dignity. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us that not just because their circumstances wasn't as good as others, their human dignity remained the same. And these people had responsibilities, they took care of the masjid, and as a matter of fact, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, I'm sure we've all at least heard the name Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He was from Ahlus Suffah. He used to be homeless, but then, alhamdulillah, he was able to elevate his circumstances and his situation, and he was able to become independent, and he got married, and he had at least one child. But that is how, you know, as a Muslim, that's how we approach problems. We try to fix the problems. We don't try to, you know, we address them properly. And just to clarify, I am not saying that we should open the doors of the masjid and let all the homeless people live here. No matter what, it's not going to be easy. You know, addressing these problems, identifying the problems, helping to fix these problems, it's not going to be easy. And we already know that it's not going to be easy because it took the Prophet ﷺ 23 years to bring Islam to Mecca. 23 years. If it took him 23 years, brothers and sisters, we need to be ready to work hard for a long time. And we need to be okay with the fact that maybe it won't happen in our lifetimes. Because if it took Rasulullah ﷺ that long, then it'll take me much longer, but that's okay. That's okay. All of these problems are our problems. Because these are problems of South Dakota. We are Muslims. We are Muslims who live in South Dakota. So now these should become our problems. Now inshallah, in the next khutbah, I'm going to talk about what are some things we can do about these problems. If there was anything which I said which was correct, indeed it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the teachings of His last and final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If there was anything which I said that was incorrect, indeed it came from shaitan and the evils of my own nafs. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله على فضله وإحسانه وأشكره على توفيقه وامتنانه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله بالهدى والدين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا أما بعد فيا عباد الله أوصي نفسي وأوصيكم بتقوى الله عز وجل. My main objective for this khutbah was to remind all of us that it was our duty as Muslims to know about the problems of our community and to be a part of the solution. So that when we hear or when we read or when we see something like meth, I'm on it, instead of us immediately being a critic and saying, oh, that was silly, oh, that was, that was really, that's the best they could have done. And when other people start making fun of us and like, oh, you're from the meth state, instead of being that, let's actually be a part of the solution. Let's admit that, oh, you know what, this is a problem. And you know what, I'm a Muslim, so this is now my problem because this is in my home, this is in my state. So now, moving forward, what do we do? Every time I give a khutbah, I try to end with some sort of action item. What do we do now? Where do we go from here? I'm going to tell you a story that I think is a good idea of where we can start. Maybe you've heard this story before. I once tried to change the world, but I couldn't. So then I tried to change my country, but I couldn't. So then I tried to change my state, and I couldn't. So I just tried to change my town, but I couldn't. So I just tried to change my family, and I couldn't. So I just focused on changing myself. But when I changed myself, it became much easier to change my family. And when my family changed, I was able to change my town. And when my town changed, I was able to change my state. And when my state changed, I was able to change my country. And then I was able to change the world. And as a Muslim, we agree with this. The ayah that I recited in the beginning of this khutbah came from Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah number 13, ayah number 11. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is not the whole ayah, this is part from the middle of the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. So what do we do now about the challenges South Dakota faces? Do what you can. Do whatever we can. And we start with ourselves. Do any of us have a problem with addiction? Whether it's meth, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whatever the case is, let's start there. Just worry about yourself. Just worry about ourselves. Seek help, seek treatment, do whatever we need to do. Let's fix ourselves. Then let's look at the people close to us, our family members, our children. Is our children struggling with drugs? Are we sure? Did we ask them? Did we start talking about it? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect us and our families, but we should at least ask, we should at least talk about it. And it doesn't matter how young they are, it's better to start the discussion. I already started it with my daughter. That, listen, this is do you know what this is? You're going to read this on the streets. Maybe your friends are going to talk about this. Do you know what this is? Have you ever tried it? Do you know anybody? Well, if you haven't and you don't, then you will know somebody as you grow older. You could always talk to me. Just know that, this is something that we don't do as Muslims, but if you ever find yourself that you're doing it, we'll work together, we'll get help, start the discussion. Our friends, our neighbors, their children, their families. Do we know anybody that we can offer help to? Going even further, our neighborhoods, our school district. Alhamdulillah, my wife, she just recently became a board member at the public library in my town. And in these board meetings, there are heads of the whole city are at these board meetings. So I would encourage all of us, if we have the opportunity, join these, these boards of the public buildings, the schools, the school district, things like that. That's a way that we can get involved. If we see, a library program about injustice or about awareness for this problem, or if we see some organization holding a rally or a speech about another social issue, then support them, be present, support them with our time, support them with our money. If there are any specialty organizations that specialize in, for example, treatment of addiction, treatment of drugs, treatment of this, then as a Muslim, we need to support these. We need to be present, we need to give them our time, we need to ask, do you need any help, do you need any equipment? These are things that we should be doing. If any of us have any special talents, if we know somebody, if some of us have friends who live in the reservations or the native lands, maybe we can go and say, I want to do something. Maybe we can go visit. Maybe we can take our kids to go visit. Maybe we can form small groups and we can have group activities or youth activities just to get everyone involved that, we should be doing something. This is a problem. This is a social issue. We're Muslims. We address the social problems. So be creative. And just very last thing, you know, brothers and sisters, today some of us may be distracted because it's Black Friday and everything's on sale and we can save money. I just wanted to remind everybody that if you really want to make the most of your money, then give it for the sake of Allah. You know, saving 50% on something is nothing compared to getting 700% back, you know, when you deal with Allah. You know, giving your money in the sake of Allah is better than any money you can save. It has more, it's a win-win-win situation. And who knows, maybe we can give money for the sake of Allah, you know, supporting some of these social justice issues, because as a Muslim, that's what we need to do. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of our sins. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from these social injustices. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to empower us to be a vehicle for change and to bring justice and to bring help in all of these people who are struggling. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and overlook our shortcomings and to forgive us for not doing more. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all Jannatul Firdaus. ثم اعلموا عباد الله أن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة في الدين بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم اعلموا أن الله سبحانه وتعالى قال في القرآن المجيد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأوفوا بعهد الله إذا عاهدتم ولا تنقضوا الأيمان بعد توكيدها وقد جعلتم الله عليكم كفيلا إن الله يعلم ما تفعلون. فاذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تفعلون. أقيموا الصلاة.